What's with all those birds?
My tropical bird collection, just in case.
Just in case what? We're not gonna need a dozen tropical birds.
Oh, I was not aware that you could see the future, Lois. Can I go ahead and get tomorrow's lottery number?
Broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia, this is The FOMO Show.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And this is a podcast where you'll hear about blockchain, cryptocurrency, emerging markets, and future tech in relatively plain English.
We'll help you stay across what's going on so you don't get the fear of missing out.
You can find us at FOMO.show or by searching The FOMO Show on your platform of choice.
Everything in this show is in the show notes. Check those out for links to stuff we're talking about and timestamps for the relevant parts, so you can always skip ahead or find it later.
So this episode we're going to be talking about masternodes. And the masternodes are essentially computers set up for proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies and some proof-of-work cryptocurrencies, which can keep a full copy of the blockchain and help process transactions. And the big deal with masternodes is that in return for running a masternode, you receive a certain amount of the newly issued coins as payment for doing that. So it's a really interesting way to get some passive income from these crypto networks.
And you've been experimenting with that a bit as well.
I have, yeah. So we'll touch on that later on.
We'll also be covering a bit of news, including the Bitcoin ETF drama and some other institutional rumblings.
Yeah, we're also going to cover Nextcloud in our privacy and security segment. And Nextcloud is essentially like a self-hosted cloud storage / Google Drive / OneDrive / Dropbox. So if you're concerned about privacy or if you're worried about Google or Microsoft reading all your stuff, which they can if you host with them, then Nextcloud is a really, really compelling option for privacy and security. Amazing. So we'll touch on that too.
I will also be checking in with Jordan.
Yeah.
Not sure where he is exactly.
Well, he sent us a text, but it was really hard to make out what was going on. And it was just like GPS coordinates and call me. So, I mean, yeah, we'll probably find out.
When we find out.
Yeah, that's right.
Weird.
Let's get into it.
If you want to be a part of the show, why not record a voice message in Telegram or email it to us? You could be the second ever person to send us a voice recording.
That's right. I don't know what we've done wrong. Maybe it's because we run privacy and security segment every week, and none of them want to be on.
You're very secure.
Show.
Well done.
So while our voices will be stolen, and you know, someone will probably make a knockoff FOMO Show podcast with us.
It'll probably be better.
Yeah. What the FOMO Show should be. So send your voicemail in. Joe, what has Joe been up to this weekend?
Well, I've been down to New South Wales, which is 1,000 kilometres away from where we're sitting at the moment in lovely sunny-ish Brisbane. And I went down to see my family, and I also got a new job, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you've been really excited about this. What are you going to be doing at this new job?
Yeah, so I'm going to be running digital marketing for an IT consulting firm in the city. So I will be seeing the big city lights and with a new job. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, awesome.
What have you been up to, mate?
Yeah, mate, I've been preparing to speak at a couple of conferences coming up.
Nice.
Including the BLOCKConscious conference, which is here next week in Brisbane. So if you're in the neighbourhood, even if you're not in Brisbane, but you're wanting something to fly to, it's being run over 3 days. A bunch of really interesting speakers. Paul Seals, the organizer of the event, has been putting in a lot of hard work trying to pull it all together and get a really good lineup of people there. So yeah, that's definitely something to check out. The first day will be like blockchain basics, so teaching people how to set up their wallets and what blockchain is, how smart contracts work. And the next 2 days are going to be a lot of speakers. There'll be breakout sessions. There's people like Roger Ver,
John McAfee.
John McAfee's coming. There's several other quite high-profile people from the crypto space, as well as a bunch of more local experts. And you're going to have access to them. The really cool thing about this is that you'll have access to those people, not just in their speeches, but a lot of them you'll be able to have breakout sessions with and smaller workshops. And yeah, so we'll be running around with our mic trying to interview at least a few of them as well too. So we can see if we can get some interviews for the show too. But
Nice.
yeah, so that's been good. Just been working on some BlockSense stuff as well.
And BlockSense is your consulting company for blockchain.
Yeah. So it's essentially like an education and advisory company. We do workshops, masterclasses. We'll consult for companies that are looking at either means testing blockchain technology or implementing it in some practical way.
Cool.
It's the area is just growing bigger and bigger, and people are getting more and more eager to learn more about it. So it's been taking up a lot of time as well.
So if you know people who want to know more about the blockchain, I can recommend a co-host who runs a business doing that. So yeah, very exciting stuff.
Joe, is this financial advice or any other type of advice?
In a word, no. This isn't investment or any other type of advice. A lot of people are telling you to get into cryptocurrency or buy cryptocurrencies. We're not saying you should buy anything at all. For full disclosure, we're both personally invested in different cryptocurrencies, some of which we talk on the show. But if we talk about a project, it doesn't mean you should buy into it.
So, do your research, never invest more than you can afford to lose, and most importantly, avoid the fear of missing out.
If you're new around here and new to crypto, check out our Blockchain Basics series. It starts at episode 2 and continues till episode 8. It will give you some grounding in the fundamentals and help you understand what on earth we're talking about on this show. So what's been going on in the news this week? I hear there's been a lot of talk about this Bitcoin ETF stuff. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so for first of all, it's probably worth explaining what an ETF actually is, because you've probably seen the term around all over the internet.
So what is an ETF?
Yeah, so an ETF stands for an exchange-traded fund. And what it essentially means is if you're an everyday investor, you can go on the market and essentially say, I want a fund that will give me exposure to a number of different assets.
Right.
And so these funds are, a lot of the time, the big deal with these funds is that they're used by a lot of insurance companies. Right. They're used by superannuation companies or welfare. It's called welfare in some... pension. Superannuation companies, it's called pensions in some places, and 401ks, I think they're called in America. But essentially, if you are an employee and you're putting, and money's getting put away for your retirement in a fund, these funds will deal in a lot of these exchange-traded assets. The fund may say, we're going to have 5% gold, 5% silver, 5% Microsoft shares, 5% Apple shares, 20% of this list of commodities. They'll have a bunch of numerous assets to kind of spread the risk out as much as they can. And generally, when they're setting up these funds, or they're looking to add or take away assets, they'll deal through a broker or an agent or a retailer. It's kind of like, the way it works is kind of, they like go to a shop for gold and say, we want your gold offering, and they add it to their fund. And until now, you couldn't do that for cryptocurrencies, because the market in America is, and in a lot of other countries too, it's very regulated.
Right.
And you have to have permission by the regulator to offer a certain portion to buy something into your exchange traded fund, or to offer something as an exchange traded fund. So if you wanted to run like what the Winklevoss twins were wanting to run, and they're the ones who've had this application rejected, they were wanting to have a Bitcoin exchange traded fund, so that mum and dad investors or these big funds, these big superannuation, pension, 401k funds could take a position in Bitcoin.
Wow.
And
so why did they reject it?
Yeah, so they rejected it essentially because they said that there was a potential for market manipulation, lack of investor protection, and security. There were several concerns around the unknown quantities and the volatility of the market as well. But it's really important to note that the decision wasn't unanimous. So an SEC commissioner called Hester Pierce was the dissenter, and her decision is worth reading if you get the chance. Her tweet summed it up. Essentially, it said, apparently Bitcoin is not ripe enough, respectable enough, or regulated enough to be worthy of our markets. I dissent.
As part of her dissent in the full text, she said, in addition, I'm concerned that the Commission's approach undermines investor protection by precluding greater institutionalization of the Bitcoin market, saying that basically more institutional participation would would actually weaken a lot of the concerns that the Commission have with the Bitcoin market. And she also said that the Commission's interpretation and application of the statutory standard sends a strong signal that innovation is unwelcome in our markets, a signal that may have effect far beyond the fate of Bitcoin ETPs.
Yeah, because essentially what they're saying in rejecting this is saying, we don't want any new products in this market. We're quite happy with the products that we have, and here's this new upstart. We don't want to give you access to this because it is a huge market. I was looking at some statistics that said even a 0.25% position by some of these big funds, if they were to take a 0.25% position in Bitcoin, would shift the market dramatically.
Wow.
Like there would be, overnight you could go to 20K or something, and that would just be a very small position. But I find it really interesting what she's saying there about the fact that actually all the criticisms that they have, so saying there's lack of visibility, it's a new market, there's could be potential market manipulation, lack of investor protection, that's all the stuff that the SEC has designed this framework to ameliorate in the first place.
Wow.
So she's kind of saying it's great that they're finally coming to us and wanting to participate in this market because they'll finally be able to offer the types of products that you're saying they haven't been able to offer to this point. Without allowing them to offer those products, that's going to continue. So it's like this circular logic,
It's nice to know, I guess, from this that just because they've made one attempt doesn't mean it's going to stop here.
Yeah.
Well, we met someone the other week who was interested in who'd actually put a bunch of their pension into cryptocurrency related assets.
Yeah.
And the demand is going to grow for that. So, like it or not, eventually it's going to. Well, something's going to happen.
Yeah, one way or another, I think they'll find a way because the market is too attractive at this point, and it's still relatively small. I think that's the other thing. So many institutional investors are looking at this market and they're salivating because they're saying there's so much room for movement here. The other thing to note too, and I was discussing this with a few people last week over dinner, is that let's say tomorrow an ETF did get approved and some of these big funds did take a position. All of a sudden, that would lock away another portion of the overall coin supply. So you might go from estimates around maybe there's 13 million Bitcoin, maybe 40 million Bitcoin in active that haven't been lost or whatever at the moment. And a lot of that's probably tied up in cold storage. So the amount of Bitcoin that's kind of liquid and being traded is a lot less. And that's why part of the reason why the price is inflated so much, because there's a lack of availability. If you then are a big fund and you take even more of that piece of the pie, all of a sudden you might only have a fraction of the amount liquidly available, which creates scarcity, which takes the price up, contributes more value to the market.
Yeah.
So there could be a lot of repercussions for this kind of stuff happening too, and that's without even talking about proof of stake and the effect that some of these funds staking some of these assets could have on their returns. And we'll touch on masternodes later, which is another kettle of fish. But yeah, it's a really interesting discussion around all this.
In relation to that, there's some closed door Nasdaq meetings going on. What was that all about?
Out of Cointelegraph yesterday, it said that around half a dozen representatives from both traditional finance and crypto industry firms, among them reportedly the Winklevoss twins Gemini company, held a closed meeting in Chicago this week. As Bloomberg reports, Nasdaq Incorporated held the meeting as a way to get the industry on the path to legitimacy.
So it seems like it's a slow, steady walk towards legitimization, but it is happening.
It is happening.
This was out of the question a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you would not have had people talking about back when Bitcoin was just Silk Road and anarchists. You would not have had people talking about this, but it seems like it's a very hot topic.
It's in the doors of it's out the doors of Nasdaq. So it's not a joke.
No, it's not a joke, and I can assure you that they were looking at that SEC decision quite closely, and they may have well said, "Well, look, this is an opportunity for us. If we can't get it listed one way, we'll try and get it listed another." So, yeah, definitely something to watch. So, mate, Telegram a few days ago came out with a new product called Telegram Passport.
This is wild. They put a blog post out on their blog, and you can check the link in the show notes, introducing Telegram Passport. They're saying all you need to do is upload your documents once, your passport, your ID, your driver's license. You upload them once, store them securely, and they'd basically release this data directly to the people who request it when you give permission for that. They're hoping that in the future all of the data from Telegram Passport will move to a decentralized cloud, so they're not even in control of it. But it seems really interesting, and there's a little demo page where you can sort of create an interface where this could be really useful for you signing up to Coinbase or an exchange, and they say, oh, we need to get your driver's license. Now, it saves you having to upload your personal data again and again and again.
To many different people. Because one of the big issues with uploading your personal data in so many different places is there's so many different servers that can get hacked. And look, Telegram, you've got to give them credit. Like that, they do end-to-end encrypt everything they possibly can, and they haven't been hacked, at least to my knowledge. There hasn't been a true hack of Telegram. So they're kind of putting their necks out and saying, look, we're happy to be the custodian of this stuff, and we will be able to give things to people in a way that it's manageable, in a way that you don't need to give all the data fully over. They might just have view access to some of these documents. But I'm really interested in what their end game is, because to me, when I'm reading through this, I look at this and I think this is the first step of a company that eventually wants to have a true custodian system. And so I'm kind of looking at this and I'm saying, similar to how you might have a Twitter account that has verified on it, and because it's Twitter that's verified it, you see that verified tick and you trust that that person is the real person that claims that account. I could foresee in the not too distant future, if Telegram can build this passport thing into something that's actually relevant and people actually use, it may not be too long before Telegram might say, okay, what we're going to do now is we are going to verify your identity internally, and because people trust this system, you won't need to give your driver's license to anyone anymore. All that people will need to do is trust that we have vetted it and we know that it's correct. And if they won't need to ask for your identification anymore. All they'll need to ask is, are you Telegram verified? And if you're Telegram verified, then they don't need anything else.
That's true.
I could see, I look at that and I think that might be where they're going with this. And in the back of my head too, I'm thinking they've just done a $1.8 billion ICO. They're very interested in blockchain technology. It may be that this is their way to eventually give people that decentralized identity that we all keep talking about and hoping that one day might come to be.
Worth watching Telegram closely. Speaking of which, do join us on the FOMO Telegram at fomo.show/Telegram. It's like a little chat room where you can shoot us questions and we can all just send memes and posts, and hello to everyone who's on Telegram. So yeah, welcome. Next piece of the news, the world's largest robot hauls iron ore through Western Australia. It's not as exciting as you might expect. When you're hearing world's largest robot, you're thinking some massive, beastly humanoid robot like, Transformer.
Optimus Prime.
Yeah. It's not as exciting as that. So the self-declared world's largest robot is an efficient, grubby example of automation. It's an autonomous train that recently hauled 28,000 metric tons of iron ore 280 kilometres across the Australian desert. That's coming out of the IEEE Spectrum magazine, which is really worth subscribing to if you're interested in future tech. It's developed by mining company Rio Tinto, and the auto haul system, which is what they've called it, cost $940 million to build. So what they had to do is they actually had to upgrade the infrastructure all along the route by all these crossings, cameras at every single crossing, and they started running them with like direct supervised autonomy mode, so with like crews still in the cabins in early 2017. Humans were present, and earlier this month, the train made the very first run using only remote supervised autonomy, meaning that there's somebody in a operations center thousands of kilometers away who's running the train. So I guess it's a bit of a robot, or else it's a big remote controlled train.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. But it's happening. Like we've talked about like automation with transport, and I guess it makes sense for trains to be the first ones because they're on rails and they've got signals. They've got plenty of signals now that send all sorts of data to the train drivers anyway, and it's control. The train drivers don't control where they go on the track anymore. It's all done remotely, and they just trust that the people watching everything are doing the right thing, and they just go by the signals. So there's only a limited number of inputs that a driver actually has to consider in their driving, and it makes sense that trains would be the first thing they automate. And the fact they're doing it in Western Australia too, which is quite
what's
remote.
important about that?
Well, so the thing with Western Australia is that it's one of the most remote places in the world.
Wow.
So where this train would be going, there wouldn't be there wouldn't be any Wi-Fi. The mobile reception would be very spotty.
Right.
You'd really only be able to do things via satellite.
Is this like a desolate landscape? Or
It's
is
a really desolate landscape. Like there's some scrub and things around, but
Right.
it's like red soil.
So it's like
desert.
Mars with trees.
Kind of, yeah.
Wow.
And there's not many people around. I can guarantee you the logistics of trying to get people on this railway to kind of watch everything would have been pretty tough because it is so remote. But it will now mean that you don't need to send people out into these remote areas as much. You can, if the train can run itself, it will make logistics so much easier for these companies, especially and then, the next step is obviously having things to unload and load the trains that are automated too. You can start then looking at automated stations and automated ports, and in areas which are quite remote, it makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So next bit of news, Google Cloud has teamed up with a fintech startup called Digital Asset to provide tools for code-free blockchain app creation.
This is pretty exciting because they're working with Google Cloud to create a sort of almost like a point-and-click solution so that without code,
Yep.
you can build apps for the blockchain. Now, Google's head of cloud financial services platform said, look, this has got a massive potential to benefit customers, not just in the financial services industry, but across many industries. So they're just making it easier to be getting involved in blockchain app creation.
Yeah, okay. So they're kind of doing similar to what Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS are doing with their blockchain offerings and having like marketplaces for blockchain apps and smart contracts and all sorts of different things like that.
And Google Cloud are not insignificant. I think they've just reached over $1 billion a quarter in revenue, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for Google, and it's diversifying their income away from ads.
Yeah.
It's pretty big stuff.
Always keen for more blockchain innovation.
Random piece of news. A Japanese space probe is set to land on an asteroid 3.2 billion kilometers away, pick up some samples, land in a couple different places on the asteroid, and then come back to Earth.
Can I just say the maths involved in this stuff, is astronomical. Because we sit at school and we get taught about the solar system, and in our head, I don't know about other people, but in my head, when if you say solar system to me, I think of all the planets kind of just lined up on these orbits, and when you think of flying to Mars, you're like, oh, Mars, it's not that far. It's the next planet over, but you forget that. So everything's moving within the galaxy. First of all, the sun's moving. It's hurtling through space at just insane velocities.
Maths.
So you're talking about all these moving things, and they're millions of kilometers from each other, and then you see this, and it's they're going to land a space probe on an asteroid 3.2 billion kilometers away. I'm sorry, that is nuts.
I found it enough of a struggle going, Alice has 5 apples, Bob has 3, Bob asked for 1 more from Alice. But I mean, this is nuts.
Yeah, if you've ever been clay target shooting, or you've watched clay target shooting on the trap shooting on the Olympics, that's hard, okay? That's classified as hard.
Right.
But what they're talking about here is having something that's not that much bigger than a gun in perspective and shooting a projectile at a moving target
3.2 billion kilometers away.
Not 50 meters away.
No problem.
You'll probably have to cut a bunch of that out, man. But it just blows my mind.
It's insane. Yeah. In much simpler matters, Iran is edging towards a national cryptocurrency. We don't know any details about it really. It's come out of Press TV, the Iranian broadcaster, and they said there's a plan that's sort of coming together. The flaws are being ironed out. Not as tricky as landing a a satellite on something on an asteroid, but still pretty interesting.
Yeah, wow. Iran's doing
potentially a way of getting around sanctions. That's what they're floating the idea as.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if it's a global currency,
Iran coin.
Iran coin, it'll be centralized. It'll definitely be centralized.
Final piece of news. BRICS nations are working together on technology for the quote-unquote fourth industrial revolution.
So who's BRICS?
So that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. This is an article coming out of RT. It's saying that the Revolution 4.0 or the digital age or whatever is considered the fourth major technological era. It encompasses digital technology as well as nanotech, biotech, robotics, AI, and a bunch of other stuff.
I heard someone discuss this a couple of weeks ago, but they called it Industry 4.0.
Ooh.
So I think some places are calling it Industry 4.0.
The crux of this is these BRICS nations who meet quite regularly are basically saying they want to work together and share knowledge and work on innovating in these areas, because the president of South Africa said that this surge in innovation has the potential to dramatically improve productivity and to place entire countries on a new trajectory of prosperity. And it has the potential to solve many of the social problems we face, he said at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg.
Yeah, so major banks from BRICS countries have agreed to work together to study how innovative technologies such as cryptocurrencies and blockchain could be applied to the infrastructure finance sector. So you remember last year, the Central Bank of Russia proposed some joint digital currencies. I think we covered that way back.
So, yeah.
And essentially proposed that to BRICS and to the Eurasian Economic Union.
So it's like Kazakhstan and a few of the countries around Russia.
And so that's been percolating in the background, and they're looking at essentially replacing the US dollars and other currencies that are used in settlements. They're saying, and look, they're not silly.
I mean, it is Brazil, Russia, India,
like
China,
all the emergent markets.
It's just a big deal.
And it's just the difference you see here, where they're like, let's come together and make a combined currency, whereas like the US is more like, no, we've got a US dollar, and it's really interesting how these guys are going for a lot more of a collaborative approach. And they're kind of saying, look, the more of us that are in on this, the more likely it is we can upend the US dollar.
I wonder what the combined population of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa is huge. India, 1 billion. China, 1 billion. Russia, 140 million.
Yeah.
Brazil, a lot.
Brazil's big.
South Africa, 1 or 2. Like, it's not an insignificant number of people.
No, and you were saying Nigeria's looking at getting in on this.
Well, yeah, I think they're basically one of these, emerging markets.
I mean, even the Eurasian Economic Union, like we've got a friend from Switzerland, a family we know from Switzerland who've just moved to one of the countries in that union. And talking to him, he said that it's amazing just how much innovation and technological adoption and new money is coming into those countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, because you've got the Silk Road from China as well, which is building a lot of infrastructure in there. They're looking at taking most of their cargo bound for Europe through those countries and having land-based ports in those countries. So for the next 50 years, that's probably the two sectors of the world where most of the money and innovation is going to be coming from, because of the growing middle class.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
I'm very excited.
It's definitely one to watch.
Wow. Wherever you're joining us from, absolute pleasure having you here.
Why not drop into our Telegram channel and say hello? You can visit us at fomo.show/Telegram.
Feel free to ping us links to news, things that you're seeing, random comments, memes, whatever happens.
Memes, lots of memes.
Memes and dreams.
Yeah. Oh, and look, if the other thing to say is if the link isn't working for you, if you're having any issues at all getting onto the actual channel, just swing us an email, FOMOshow@protonmail.com, or comment or tweet at us, or get on Facebook and get on us there.
Or come to my house.
Or come to Joe's house and stand outside his house and yell at him.
Yeah.
He'll come out and, let us know.
Masternode coins. People might have heard quite a bit about them. Some of us might not have heard nothing about them. All I know is they were popularized by the cryptocurrency Dash. Tell us more about them. What are masternodes?
Yeah, so masternodes were originated or were popularized by the cryptocurrency Dash, which we've talked about before. It's similar to how we look at we go to Bitcoin first to explain blockchain. It's easiest to go to Dash first to explain masternodes.
Right.
So masternodes on Dash are special servers, and they power several functions on the network, which is private send, instant send, and the governance and the treasury system on Dash. So, for example, instant send on Dash is like a quicker transaction. It only needs 2 confirmations. It will pretty much be instant. That's why it's called instant send.
Right.
And it won't need to go through a lot of the... it won't need to go through all the block producers who produce blocks on the network to be confirmed. And the general theory behind masternodes is that they will be the block producers on certain types of networks, and so a lot of proof of stake networks use masternodes, and some proof of work networks use masternodes as well. And they're essentially nodes on the network which are up all the time. They've generally got some minimum requirements about the server, so you couldn't just run a masternode on like a Raspberry Pi or something, because it's required to have a certain amount of transaction capability, processing capability, speed, etc., etc. And so these are essentially like super nodes on the network, which can perform the more advanced functions of whatever the platform dictates. So on Dash, they to become a masternode, you usually have to buy in. So you need like 1,000 Dash, for example, on the Dash network to be able to start a masternode, and you essentially need to lock that up. You need to lock that money up, and essentially, what do they call it? And they call that collateral. Right. So if you want to buy in to having a masternode, you put this money down as a collateral, and then you get to not only power private send and instant send, but you get a certain amount of every block reward. So every block that's minted by the network on Dash, for example, you get 45% of the reward goes to the masternodes. Right. And there's also a 10%. So on Dash, 45% of the reward goes to the masternode, 45% of the reward goes to the miners, so the general proof of work miners who are producing the normal blocks, and then 10% goes to the treasury. And what the treasury is, it's like a fund where 10% of all the rewards get paid into, and every month a payment gets made to like the treasury account of Dash. And that treasury account, if you have a masternode, you have a vote to determine what happens with that money. Wow. So having the masternode essentially gives you a entitlement to choose what gets funded, and it also gives you an entitlement on Dash to participate in the governance.
Wow. So how much would it cost for me to set up a masternode for Dash?
Yeah, so Dash is 1,000 Dash, which is at the moment, looking at the current figures, about $250,000.
Wow.
So it's not cheap.
Wow.
It was a lot cheaper back when Dash first started, but it's a lot more expensive to set up a Dash masternode now.
So how do they work?
Simply put, a masternode is like a server with a full copy of the blockchain, which guarantees a minimum level of performance, functionality, and uptime. So essentially they set the standard for the network, and they take care of not just block production, but a lot of the special tasks that happen on the network. So if you want to start a masternode, you need to basically make sure that it's going to be online 24/7, and you need to agree to the minimum requirements of these masternodes, and that can differ from network to network, but generally the obligations and expectations are a lot higher on people running masternodes than the general people who might be staking or mining blocks on the network.
So how would what's the most common way that people would host those? Yeah,
so essentially the way that a lot of people are doing it now is they're using what's called a VPS, which is a virtual private server. So I've set up a few masternodes myself recently, and that's part of the reason why we're talking about it today, because I've had some practical experience recently setting up masternodes on some smaller coins, some lower cap coins, and the general process is you'll rent a VPS. So it's generally like $5 a month. It's not that expensive to get a VPS which has enough power to run a masternode. And then you will generally set up, you'll buy the required amount of cryptocurrency, and then you will generally send it to a local wallet first, and you'll set whatever you need to set up on your local wallet, and then you'll generally like install some dependencies on your server. So it's generally a Linux server you need to set up on your virtual private server, and then you put in some commands, you install some dependencies, you install the wallet, and then there's generally a formula you need to do to make it so that your masternode is ready to be a masternode on the network.
Right.
Once you've done all that and you've put your collateral in, so you've locked those coins away and said, yep, here's my amount to buy in. I now want to be a full block producer on this network and do everything a masternode does. Then you're pretty much good to go. You just send it the start signal, and it'll start running the software which secures the network.
Wow.
And the big thing with these masternodes, and the reason why they're so worth looking into if you're interested in experiencing some of the different ways you can make money in crypto and participate in the network, is that they will earn you interest.
Wow.
So you will get payments for securing the network by these masternodes, and those payments differ between all the different blockchains. So some masternode systems, like the bigger ones, PivX, Dash, Wager, a few of those other ones, their payouts aren't that big.
Right.
The reward for running a masternode in comparison to the amount of money you need to spend to run the masternode isn't as big.
Right.
And so for people on those ones, the passive income would be nice, because, I mean, if you're holding the coin because you believe the coin's going to appreciate, then, you know, having a masternode is essentially like getting an extra benefit from holding those coins. But for the ones that don't pay out as much regularly, then the benefit is more that you get to participate in the governance of the network, and you need to make decisions and things like that. But for some of the lower cap coins, there's an opportunity there if you look into them and you're quite careful and realistic about what you can do with them to make a decent amount of interest on your investment within some of these coins, because they may have higher payout rates than you see on the PivX or the Dashes of masternode coins.
So what are some of those the other coins that are running that allow for masternodes, and where could I go to find them? Yeah,
so there are a whole bunch of masternode coins that allow that, and there's, you know, so for example, there's some called Neutron. There's one called Ion, I think. There's one I was looking at recently called Purex. The issue with a lot of these, of course, is that they may not have the best development teams.
Right.
A lot of them are just forks of PivX or Dash, and they're more like someone's science experiment, which they've worked out they might be able to make a bit of money from, rather than legitimately trying to build something that may be relevant for a number of coming years. But there's a website called masternodes.pro, and that's probably the best aggregation site I've found for some of the more notable masternode coins. And it lists it essentially like what you would see on CoinMarketCap or OnChainFX or CoinGecko or any of those coins, where you can see details like how much a masternode costs you and the amount that's required, what a masternode is currently worth, how much it pays out monthly and yearly based on the current interest rates, and a number of other statistics. So you can essentially look at it and get a good idea of what some of them do. But personally, I found that it only aggregates a certain amount of coins, and I don't know how well it's maintained, so I'm not sure exactly how accurate all the information is.
So you've had a lot of fun experimenting with some of these smaller coins, but what have you learned doing that?
Yeah, so I've found that to find something that you can cut your teeth on, you know, something that isn't too expensive, that you're going to be investing a significant amount of money into it. You really need to look in the weeds. There's a website called Bitcoin Talk. It's a forum. It's kind of where all of the original blockchain stuff sprung from. So back when Satoshi was still around and a lot of the earlier guys were working on the projects, everyone talked on Bitcoin Talk, which is a forum. And it's in the name, Bitcoin Talk. I think it was started by Satoshi, or it was started by someone else that got on very early. And that's where all the new projects used to announce things. So if you go back, you can see like Litecoin, the announcement thread for Litecoin, and all the talk about it, and you can see like the announcement thread for Ethereum. These days things are a lot more decentralized, so you've got Telegram and Slack and all sorts of different and Reddit and all sorts of different communication mediums. But I've generally found that most of the new masternode projects are still announced on Bitcoin Talk because it seems to be where most of the coin creation community still hangs out.
Right.
So I've generally found that to pick out some of these masternodes and look at them and see whether they're actually worth my time, which most of them aren't. But to kind of do that due diligence, you need to go through the Bitcoin Talk forums and look through there and work it. And that's generally been the way I've found the ones that I've cutting my teeth on, and you can find some real gems in there.
Right. So setting these up, is it technically intensive? What would you for anybody who's new to setting up masternodes? You know, they might have. What difficulty would you relate that to? Is it as easy as it is to install an operating system on a computer, or how would you compare it difficulty-wise?
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely more difficult than installing an operating system on a computer.
Right.
You have to set up a server, so
Right.
you've got to be probably a bit familiar with how Linux works,
Right.
and the command line, and
Right.
terms like that. In saying that, though, most of these masternode coins have a decent guide. You know,
Right.
if you follow the guide, you can generally get the thing set up. It might take you some time,
Right.
but you can eventually get there. And a lot of the time, if you just go through the forums or go on their Discord and ask, or look for someone else that's asked the question you might have first, and a lot of the time you'll find the answer. But if not, you can generally ask the question and someone will help you out. Otherwise, you know, if you can Google the problem and you might find that someone else can help you out with that too. So
Right.
it's technologically intensive, but it's not impossible. The guides out there are pretty good. And look, it's a really good learning experience because you do actually begin to learn how a lot of these projects are put together and how these blockchains work, which is really interesting. And I was stepping you through one earlier. So one of the ones that I've put some money into and set up, I was showing you earlier how it all worked.
You'd think, you're seeing the amount that it costs to buy a Dash node, $250,000. There are some of them that only cost, a few $100s to set up. So it's not necessarily so difficult to get into.
No, it's not. And I mean, there's ones. The one I set up a few days ago cost me, I think, $30 or $40.
Wow.
To get a masternode, and the return on investment on that one is quite good. So
Wow.
it's weird talking about this stuff as if you're getting your money back, But you can generally get your investment back at the current market rates without taking too long.
Wow.
On some of these smaller ones.
Wow.
So you might not even need a few $100s. It might be more like $50 or something that you put into some of these. I would warn that you need to be careful. So I generally, with most of these coins, I set my wallet up on a virtual machine.
Right.
So I don't set it up on my main operating system.
Right.
I start a virtual machine, and you can Google guides to set virtual machines up. They're pretty easy to set up. And
What's the benefit of that?
So the benefit of having a virtual machine is it's cordoned off from the rest of your computer.
Right.
So it's kind of like running an operating system within an operating system, but it's in its own container. So
Right.
you kind of essentially you set up a container and you might install Windows in that container,
right.
and then you can open it like any other application, and you've got another copy of Windows there, but it can't really touch your main operating system.
Right.
So if anything goes wrong in there or there's some malware in there, generally speaking, it can't jump from that container
Right.
into your main operating system.
Sensible. Very sensible.
Yeah. So, I mean, because you're downloading things that someone's made probably in their basement, and you don't know whether it's actually legitimate or not. And it's something that you need to be careful with. And so it's a lot. I get a lot more peace of mind when I install it on a virtual machine. And I generally don't go after anything that hasn't at least been listed on one exchange.
So there are clearly some benefits with this. I mean, you get some newly issued coins from the coin that you invest in.
Yep.
But what are some of the disadvantages of getting into masternodes?
Yeah, so some of the disadvantages is, for one, you tie your funds up. So you're essentially a hardcore holder by getting into these things, because you have to put your funds up as collateral to have the masternode. So you're decreasing the supply of the coin. You're not using it, you're just holding it, and that's a con. It could also be a pro, because you are getting rewarded for that, which could become your spending money. Another issue is that these things really benefit the early adopters most. So the people that get in really early, generally it's a lot cheaper for them to get in. They can get their masternodes up and running a lot quicker. Generally, there's like a gradual scale where the rewards decrease over time as the network grows. So the people that get in early generally seem to make a lot of money. That's one of the biggest complaints with Dash. Dash had a very big what they call insta-mine or pre-mine early on, and a lot of people got a lot of Dash early on and were able to set up these masternodes. And because of the way that masternodes compound, because these masternodes make so much money, it then allows them to set up more masternodes from those masternode rewards. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you kind of have the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer in a way.
So with Dash, you're earning $23,000 a year from a masternode.
Yep.
But that may not have cost very much at all back in the day.
Exactly. And if you've got 20 masternodes, you're earning 2 masternodes worth every year,
Masternodes sound pretty cool. Technically a bit to set up, but sound pretty cool to explore.
Yeah, look, to be frank, the main reason you would explore masternodes at the moment that aren't on any of the big networks is to make money.
Right.
And I think you have to approach it with eyes wide open. And this is not investment advice, but you need to be very realistic when you're coming to these coins, and you need to expect that it could all go to zero tomorrow if the project crashes or something else. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you do what I'm doing, for example, and get into some of these masternodes, make your money back, move that money out so you're not losing anything, then everything else is it's profit, really. And it's a really interesting way to learn about the blockchain, to learn about how some of these networks are working, and it's kind of fun. Even just showing you before how these things work. That
looked awesome. It was just clicking around, showing a wallet that was like cordoned off from your main computer, and just seeing that there was a real reward that came in there. You had a certain amount, and then it was after a few days you'd already received a reward, which you can cash out right now from something you didn't even buy. This is why the tax thing is so weird, though. Yeah. Because you're getting that money without investing in it.
Yeah.
I say you're getting that money. You're getting a coin. You're going to get taxed on that? Capital gains?
It is a gain. Ridiculous. It's essentially a gain. So, it's ridiculous. And the question for everyone in their various jurisdictions is when you realise that gain, like at what time, and I don't think a lot of governments have sorted this stuff out yet. And that's why this should be a separate asset class, which is an entirely different conversation. But there's nothing like this. We're talking about masternodes here. There's no comparable analog anywhere else in the financial world for this kind of stuff. It's completely new. So anyway, look, check out Masternodes. If you want to chat more about it, jump on our Telegram. I'd be more than happy to talk through this kind of stuff with you, give you some tips, help you out. They're fun. Yeah. They're really fun to get into.
Good weekend project for when it's raining.
That's right.
In our privacy and security section, we're looking at a tool called Nextcloud. Next Cloud. It lets you host your own cloud with a bunch of stuff on there. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so Nextcloud is really interesting because it's essentially designed to be an alternative to Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox, and they have so much functionality. I initially checked out Nextcloud because I was on a big privacy kick, and I looked up something called OwnCloud and found out that that Nextcloud was kind of like the next version of it. Wow. So a lot of the OwnCloud team had left because there were some issues there, and they went and founded Nextcloud. And the more I looked into Nextcloud, the more I realized that it was actually a really powerful alternative to Google Drive and OneDrive and Dropbox, but also some other things like your calendar app. So Google Calendar, and they've got document management in there, and they've got all sorts of collaborative tools behind the scenes. And initially I looked at it and I thought, well, how can an open source project be so good and have so much functionality? But I researched a bit more on it, and I found that they offer a lot of their services to businesses.
Right.
And they allow businesses to essentially host their own cloud.
So why would anyone want to host their own cloud anyway?
The main reason why you would want to use Nextcloud is if you want control of your own data. So at the moment, anything you put on a cloud storage account, be it Microsoft, be it Google, be it Dropbox, that data is available to any employee with the privileges to look at it in Google or whatever other organization it is. But what it means is that everything you put in cloud storage is visible to other people somewhere in offices. And while some people may be comfortable with that, it really represents a huge breach of privacy, especially if you're putting sensitive documents in there, like things that, be it financial records, be it private photos, especially if you're backing your photos up to the cloud, for example, you need to expect with any of those services that someone's going to see them and people are going to look through them pretty regularly. Nextcloud, in the alternative, gives you the ability to host it yourself. So you can do it anywhere from, say, like the VPS, like what we talked about before with the Masternodes. You can host Nextcloud on a VPS or a web server. So, for example, I've got a Nextcloud on one of my websites, and it just sits there behind the scenes. I install it off cPanel, which is what runs the back end for most web hosting services. Right. And it gives you basically the full suite just there. And you can start a calendar. You can start uploading photos and videos and managing documents and all sorts of things. Right. Or if you really want to get really serious, you can host it at home. Wow. And you can put it on like a little server that you build and whack a hard drive into it. And as long as you've got like a static IP address, so something that stays the same all the time, you can connect to it from anywhere in the world. Wow. And it's like your own cloud hosting service. Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Wow. So Nextcloud. If you're interested in being your own Google, minus the search, check it out.
So we're going to give Jordan a call now. He texted us earlier from somewhere. Basically said, can you call me when you get the chance? I'm not really sure what he wants. Last time we left him...
He was trying to find John McAfee in
That's right.
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Bit odd, but coconut coin or some nonsense he was talking about.
That's right. Yeah. So
interesting chap.
Yeah. Let's see what he's up to.
Hello?
Jordan, is that you?
Yes. Hello. Hold on 1 second. No. Starboard. Yes, mate. How you doing, huh?
I'm good, Jordan. It's a bit hard to hear you. Where are you?
Look, I'm on a scientific research vessel, just off the coast of Japan, huh?
A scientific research vessel?
Yes, I'm on the hunt. I'm on the hunt for some big Bitcoin whales, huh?
Did you say Bitcoin whales, Jordan?
For science, Bitcoin for science, whales. Yes.
Right, so you're off the coast of Japan in a storm, it sounds like, hunting Bitcoin whales.
I don't have a lot of time. My phone is very poor here. It costs me a lot of money, but yes, we are hunting whales. What more do I need to say, huh?
Okay, Jordan, just one question. What do you think Bitcoin whales actually are?
Look, it's something we're looking on the sonar. We're seeing if we can see. I mean, it's tricky. We'll know when we catch them, and research it. But for now, we are just looking, huh? Yes, look, I mean, it's not an easy job, but I'm trying to do it. Somebody has to do it, so I'm on the hunt for them. I'll let you know what I find. I'll catch you soon.
So 2 weeks ago, he was on a Pacific island. He'd started coconut chain or coconut coin or something. We leave him alone for 2 weeks.
This is supposed to be our roving reporter who does serious features for us here at the FOMO Show. No. We need to drugs test this man.
The problem is he could write some really interesting pieces for us because he lives a really interesting life.
Yeah.
It's just nailing the guy down and actually getting him to do something.
Could you imagine the life and times of Jordan Cronje? I mean, I'd buy that book.
I would buy that book too. Yeah. But he's off hunting Bitcoin whales. If you know someone who might enjoy the show, please feel free to share it with them.
You can find us at FOMO.show.
You can jump in our Telegram at FOMO.show/Telegram.
You can follow us on Twitter at @the_FOMO_show.
You can follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/The FOMO Show.
And YouTube at FOMO.show/YouTube.
That's it for us here at The FOMO Show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you like our show, please do feel free to subscribe in your podcast app of choice or via our YouTube channel. I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And as always, remember,
no FOMO. Here we hear the sounds of the subtle crunch of the chocolate chip biscuit. With your host, Matt Shearing.
This is really good.
That looks good.
That's a real good biscuit.
Where did you get them?
Woolworth.
A fine establishment of wares and tears.
They're like home brand.
It's so weird because Woolworths in the UK went totally bust. They were a store that didn't know what they did. They were a stationer mixed with, you know, you could buy a pick and mix for your sweets. You could buy DVDs and VHS tapes there.
Really?
And, like, they didn't really sell... There was nothing that you went there in particular for, but they did all of it.
So were they not really a supermarket or...?
No, they're not even a supermarket. In
Oh,
Australia,
okay.
Woolworths, supermarket. It's where you buy your groceries.
Yeah.
In England, you wouldn't dream of buying your groceries at Woolworths. You buy those tacky gifts for your family at Christmas at Woolworths.
Oh, so they were kind of like a...
Kind of like Office Works, but not really Office Works.
okay.
Like, if you took the sad child of, like, the reject store... I don't even know what the reject... I've never walked in, but it's what I imagine.
It's just like cheap stuff.
It's that.
Yeah,
It's
cheap
exactly
stuff.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Right.
Woolworths.
Because there is a place in the UK which is I noticed was in a fair amount of different places, which is kind of like the high end groceries. Everything's a lot more expensive there.
Marks and Spencers?
Yes.
Marks and Sparks?
Yes, I didn't
Or
understand.
Waitrose.
Yeah,
Marks
that
and
was the other
Spencer's
one.
pretty bougie.
Yeah. Because the one I always went to was Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
Which I
A
really
classic.
liked. Yeah, I like they had some really good stuff in there. They had
Yeah.
these like $2 meals.
Oh,
I didn't want
nice.
to spend much on meals,
Yeah.
like, especially for lunchtime. So I just get these Sainsbury's like $2 meals. I just like heat them up.
Question.
Yes.
Have you eaten a pork pie in your life?
I think so at a pub
Nice.
in the
Good.
UK.
I'm
pretty
glad.
sure.
I'm glad.
Like, because generally I go to a pub and I'd like be like, "What's the local?"
Wait, it's like a cold pie, right?
Yeah. You heat up.
Oh.
Wait, you're talking about cold pie? A cold pork pie?
Yeah. It's like... Right, here we go. Pork pie. It's cold.
Oh, it's cold.
It's sometimes, if it's fancy, it's got an egg in it.
What?
Nah. Okay, so what it is, that's
It looks like
pork,
meatloaf.
It's like pork mince. It's just a thick amount of pork mince.
Oh.
So it's like chilled. It's like a jelly around.
Oh, yuck. Really?
Bear with me. And it's got this crisp pastry on the outside and like meat on the inside. That and a bit of hot sauce. That is lunch. And you can buy those at shops for, £1 or £2.
See, I'm all about like pastry on the outside, meat on the inside. Like
Yeah.
I love like sausage rolls, meat pies, whatever else.
Sausage rolls are good.
Even like mince pies.
Yeah.
Like like your spiced
Yeah.
minced cold pies.
Yeah.
Love it. But I don't know. That just looks like. It just doesn't look very appealing.
Right,
Maybe it's 'cause
I'm
it's
buying
cut
pork
open.
pies for all of my close friends and see how many close friends I have after. I'll double the amount of friends or lose everybody entirely. I'm gonna get you one of those, man. You need to try them.
Okay.
They're the staple of a British picnic.
Would it be fair to say they, like, along with tea, they sustain the British nation?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons Brexit is no problem. We
you've
have
got
pork
pork pies.
pies, we've got cider,
Yeah.
and we've got the Queen. The first explorers to walk to the South Pole or the North Pole were insane people. Like, I was driving 10 hours to get just a tiny amount across the Australian map. I was driving for hours. There was so much stuff to drive past. Like, the colour of the soil changed on that journey.
Yep.
These people went the whole way to the South Pole when did they go? The 1900s?
Yeah, it was like late 1800s, I think.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they walked to the middle. There was not a pub at the end. There was nowhere to go. You go to a point for nothing.
There wasn't even a pole there. For like, they had to plant the pole.
You had to plant the pole. And then, for what?
Yeah.
And then you
Just-
come back.
just
There's
to
no
do
one's
it.
cheering
Yeah.
you.
People
That's
died,
terrible.
like families lost sons, wives lost husbands,
Mate.
just for human exploration. The same thing happened in Australia with Burke and Wills. I don't know if you've heard the story of Burke and Wills, but in Australia, back when we colonised, there was because the country was so big, there was all these exploration expeditions. Because going out from Sydney Harbour, where they first landed, to anywhere was like an adventure, and everywhere was new, you know. And then eventually settlements sprung up, and there was a settlement called Adelaide, which is now the capital city of South Australia, on the bottom of Australia, and there was a settlement way up the top of Australia called Darwin. And then further up from that, there was Cape York, which is like the top tip of Australia.
Right.
And what Burke and Wills decided they wanted to do was they wanted to go from one side to the other. So they wanted to go from Adelaide all the way up to the top of Australia.
Wow.
And this
through
was,
Australia or around the edge?
No, just through the middle. They zigzagged a bit. You know, I don't think they went directly through the middle, but it was basically like from the bottom to the top. And this was way back in the day. Like they basically just had to, I think they had horses at the start, but they were walking by the end, you know. And what eventually ended up happening was they had all these suppliers, and they got a certain way, and they said, look, like, we don't need all these supplies. We don't need to take them all the way to the top. We're going to be coming back this way anyway. So let's bury half of our supplies, so we can pick them up on the way back. Right. And so what they did was they were in this area with a bunch of trees, and they said, let's just put a mark on this tree because we'll come back the same way, you know. And that's like nuts in and of itself, because if you've even tried to find someone's house in the city, you know how hard it is, like, or if you've played hide and seek in a forest, you know how hard it is to find the exact same place you're at. Let alone if you're walking across a country the size of Australia,
where every tree looks the same.
But anyway, they thought this was a bright idea, and I guess the heat was finally getting to them at this stage or something. So they drew on the tree and said, "Dig here," and pointed to the thing and buried their stuff. Now they were good enough to go all the way to the top and get back to that same, I think it was within like 500 meters or something, to where they dug this hole and planted the stuff, and kind of knew where they were. They were like, "Oh, this looks familiar. This is where we hid the food," but they couldn't find the tree.
What?
And so they died.
Wow.
They died of hunger or thirst or both. And the area where I think at least one of them died was only like 500 meters from the tree or something ridiculous. But that's the story of Burke and Wills. And same thing. They were just like, we just want to walk from the bottom to the top.
But why would you walk from that? Like, you would be walking for weeks.
Yeah.
And there is no GPS that tells you how far to your destination. You're walking with an indeterminate... What? What?
But
and how would you know where... No.
To those people, though, you know, and to those guys, like, they're nuts, first of all. But also they're like, we'll be the first people seeing these places.
Sheesh, respect.
Yeah. So,
that is a tough brand of person who wants to cross Australia.
Oh, they did it really tough back then.
Sheesh. Australian history here on the FOMO Show.
There you go.
Tell you what, you need an authoritarian ruler.
Yeah. If you know someone who might enjoy the show, please feel free. Come on. Again, the finish line.